Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight live in the Bourbon Life Studios, it is not Matt. It is my good friend, Chad. Chad, what's up, man?
What's going on, man?
Happy to have you here.
Happy to be here. I'm not as good looking or as clean as Matt, but, you know, I'm here. I'm on time. I do have slippers.
You do have slippers on, just like Matt.
Just
and
like Matt.
You got a nicer, you know, Matt can't grow facial hair, man.
He can grow
he grows that little caterpillar mustache. It looks awful,
a few
right?
hairs, you know.
Gosh, man. Yeah. So you got the full thing, man, in full glory right there. So I'm thrilled to have you. And I appreciate you doing this, man. So
I'm thrilled to be here. I mean,
Matt's on the road. He's actually working. You know, Matt never works, but
he doesn't. He's in Texas.
Texas. That's right, man.
Yeah. Him and Big Chief should get together.
That's right. That's right. Big Chief's down there in Texas, man. They could get together and hang out. Where's he at in Texas? Do you know where Matt is? Just all over the state.
As far as Texas goes, he's just there.
He's in Texas.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you where.
Matt, if you're listening, we know Matt's not listening. Matt's parents are listening.
They are. Matt never listens. Well, he might because he's not on this episode. He never listens to an episode.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
So,
well, we got a cool show, man. I'm really excited about this for several different reasons tonight, man. So, but before we start, of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast. We appreciate all of our sponsors, everything they do for us. We couldn't bring you this show every week without all their help and their support. So thank you to all of our sponsors. With that said, Chad, would you like to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely, Marcus. So we've got Brian Luftman, co-founder of Never Say Die. And, you know, we both met Brian at Bourbon Con.
We did.
And it was a great time that weekend. So happy to have you here, Brian. Thanks for coming down. And,
welcome.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and you got the fancy silks, people. I'm looking at the camera. People can see the fancy. We'll get into that story here in just a little bit, man. So
it's kind of my
I'm
thing.
wearing the hoodie at work today, and
I'm wearing a gray fleece. Go figure, right? That's like the standard. Now I was dressed up. I had a sport coat on at Bourbon Con.
You look sharp.
I had it on today. Actually, I wore the same sport coat for a business function, and I thought, man, I'm just going to show up for the podcast.
I don't know if you have any other sport coats, do you?
I do.
I've only ever seen that one.
I know. I've got a couple now, so I'm branching out, man. But
I mean, I first saw you at Bourbon Con. I was like, oh man, look at that guy. He looks so damn sharp. He's so familiar.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Don't feed that ego, Brian.
Yeah.
Don't feed the ego, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Just don't say anything negative about the hair, and we'll be cool, man. Well, man, we're happy to have you on the show. It's great, and I know it's kind of short notice, man, but you're here in Lexington, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. This worked out really well, so we're excited to have you here in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement. So thanks, sir. It's kind of creepy when you call people and you're like, hey, you want to come and hang out in my basement?
I told my wife, I mean, because she said, where are you going again tonight? And I was like, I'm going to film a podcast. It's like one of the bigger nationwide podcasts of bourbon. They're like, in Lexington? I was like, well, we're in the heart of bourbon country. This is like living in Napa and filming a wine contest or a podcast, you know?
That's exactly right. Well, I appreciate those kind words. You know, we're still, after 6 years, we're still trying to get our name out there.
Brittany says, where are you going tonight? I'm like, to Mark's house.
There you go. Well, Brittany's used to it after 5 years of Bourbon Life Cruise. So we got some good stuff poured up here, man. You brought some great stuff. So, Brian, what we usually do before we jump into the conversation, we'll talk about what we're going to drink on each round. So it's your juice. If you want to tell us what you poured up for us on this first round, that's cool.
Yeah, the first round's just our flagship small batch bourbon. It's 95 proof, so it's supposed to drink super elegant and drinkable, neat.
Yeah.
We were just trying to be in that same ballpark as like a Blanton's or a Weller, where you could just pick one up off the shelf, Angel's Envy, and you just know you're getting something exquisite, but like not going to knock your socks off, but you could definitely find it again. Like this is something we're just trying to create a consistent product. Two consistent products, really, just a bourbon and a rye.
Yeah.
And not any other releases beyond that. And just make like pretty much the opposite of what everyone else is doing in the industry right now, which is like
branching out into just 30 different things.
Exactly. Yeah. We're going to have 2 bottles on the shelf. And so we're going to drink those. And then there's a third bottle that I'll share with you guys later on that is only available in England.
Awesome. And, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. We'll talk about that. Can I see the bottle? Because
of course.
I'll actually, and I was going to say we can hold it up, and we'll talk about this because that is one of the things that we talked about at Bourbon Con. You talked about during your presentation, which we were talking about earlier. You were at Bourbon Con and your presentation was jam packed. And there were other presentations that I went to of people that I thought would be jam packed, and they were not jam packed. And I walked into yours, and it was like crazy how many people were there, man. So like, there's obviously a buzz about the brand, and we could talk about that here in just a little bit. But the bottle itself is really cool. I mean, it stands out. The label's cool. We'll talk about the design and all the different nuances that you shared with us at BourbonCon. But I wanted people to be able to actually see what the bottle looks like. So Brian, let's talk about you, man. We always like to start the show talking about our guest. We'll jump into the brand a little bit in the second round, or a lot, I should say.
And by the way, that was so cool at BourbonCon. I mean, like, I've never been more like impressed and flattered in my life. Like walking into a jam-packed standing room only room, listening to, wanting to hear about the story and Never Say Die. So I'm thrilled that you guys are letting me do this today and letting the world know about it, because I feel like it's one of those brands that once people latch onto and learn about, that they want to learn more and they want to, they fall in love with it. So thanks for exposing it tonight. No problem,
man. We're happy to do it. I really enjoyed listening to you speak. You know, there's people in this industry that are good at what they do in terms of production of bourbon, but they're not so great at presenting what their product is. And you are great at it. So I was like, this guy's going to be a natural for the podcast. So this will be definitely easy show. So I really,
let's see.
Yeah, well, we got 2.5.
The night is young.
We have 2 2/3 rounds still to go, right? So we'll see how it flows. So let's talk about you, man. We always like to start out talking about our guests. So can you tell everybody a little bit about, or a lot of bit about yourself? You know, your background, where you're from originally, and just talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I grew up in Lexington, so bourbon has been in my blood, right? Yeah. I mean, it's where growing up here, it's hard to avoid bourbon. But it was like we were talking about earlier before we started recording. I mean, it was more like Jim Beam in the back of your pocket on the way to a football game or something. Like,
exactly.
It wasn't the same as the way we enjoy bourbon these days. So, but then I moved up to, I went away to college in 2001. I graduated from Miami of Ohio, and then I went up to Chicago.
Yeah.
And kind of...
Wait a second. So you went to Miami of Ohio, and then you ended up in Chicago.
Yeah.
That's a big jump, man.
Yeah. So it was like a progression. You know, I moved 2 hours away for college and then 6 hours away for...
Did you know somebody up there, or was it just through college you landed a job up there?
You know, my aunt went there, and I went there when I was a little kid.
And you're like, man, Chicago's cool.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. In Miami.
No, yeah, because Miami's not a big school.
Yeah.
But that's kind of because you went from Lexington to Miami of Ohio, but then from Miami of Ohio to Chicago.
Right. Well, I met a Illinois girl when I was at. Yeah.
Now we know the rest. Yeah. That seems how. Yeah, that always works that way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I met a girl. Next thing I know, I'm in another state.
But before
I don't have my pants on. I don't know what happened. No, I'm just.
Who are you?
Yeah. Let's be honest. When you're a teenager, that tends to happen.
So you're.
But I also, like, before I ever met her, before I even went away to college, I wanted to be a trader at the Chicago Board of Trade. Like, I went there when I was 16 years old and said that's what I want to do with my life and as my profession. So I went up to Miami to study finance to learn that.
Damn.
And so
that's impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, because not many people ever say this is what I want to do and actually follow through and do it. But, you know, I was one of those fortunate people when I was in high school. I said I want to be an attorney, and ended up, I don't know how, but I ended up doing it.
Yeah.
But that's a rare thing where that people that young say I want to do it. But that's kudos to you, man, for doing it. So can you talk about that? Because I'm fascinated with finance and almost switched my major from political science to finance in college. Yeah, I ended up getting an MBA just because the business aspect of things. I thought it'd be very helpful, but I almost switched over to finance. But yeah, I'm intrigued by that, man. So talk a little bit about that background, man. That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I first went down there because a friend of mine who was from Kentucky, Glenn Bromagen, was a legendary trader up there, and his kids were friends with me, and he took us around on the floor, and I was just so intrigued. I was like, man, why are these guys yelling about? What's all this energy? You know, it was just like this immense energy. And so then once I started studying what it was and what they were doing and how it was literally legalized gambling, I was in, man. Like,
so it really was like, we were joking about Trading Places, the movie earlier. So, I mean, it's really like that, is it?
Oh, heck yeah. You're living that. It's literally, there's no, like, that is a very accurate portrayal. But it's almost like the silliness of it is accurate too. Like, because this is just a bunch of grown men who are acting like children. I mean, truly, because there's no one around to watch you. Like, you're literally just yelling, screaming, adrenaline, a bunch of alpha dogs, just duking it out in person. And it's really fun. And it's literally, and there's only so much business to go around.
Right.
And it's highly competitive, but you're competing with people that you're going to be standing next to for the next decade of your life. Right. So you can't treat them like jerks. You got to be somewhat respectful. So it's a really cool dynamic where you're trying to be friendly with people. Yeah. Meanwhile, you're like tooth and nail competing for dollars or livelihood or whatever. So I was totally all in, and I loved it. And it was actually really good for me. I mean, it was a perfect job for me. And if it were still there, I'd still be doing it, frankly.
Yeah.
Problem is that like online trading kind of jumped in 10 years after I got there. Yeah. But I had a good run. It was fun. And now computers do what I used to do.
Yeah. So you said before you were trading cattle, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Cattle options. Yep. Call and put options.
Isn't that wild, man? I mean, you're shaking your head like
I don't know. Like, I know you can sell and trade everything, but
yes,
I guess never thought cattle options were on the stock trade.
Well, think about it. So like the cattle market's enormous. Like how many days you go by without eating beef of some sort or milk or dairy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's an enormous market, and the amount of risk that's out there for like a McDonald's or even like a meat packing company who's selling beef, there's immense risk. So they need to, the McDonald's makes or breaks how much money they make based on what they had to pay for the cows, right?
Right.
Because they can't change the price of the cheeseburger. So good point. They're constantly hedging, and so they need a place to buy call and put options or futures to take off some of that risk. And what was crazy was, so I'm a trader, and my whole job was to make a price on what a call or a put option would be worth. But I didn't know. So the brokers are smart. Like the brokers who have the deal, McDonald's guy is on the phone, and he's like, hey, I gotta buy 10 million options or whatever the heck crazy number it is, what McDonald's needs to use to make a legitimate hedge on their business. And you don't know if that broker's on the phone with some hillbilly in Texas who has 10 cows, or if it's literally McDonald's headquarters. And you've got to have the cojones, so to speak, to be able to make a bet and say, I'll buy those options for $5. I'll sell them for $5.10. Which means I think they're worth $5.05. And so I'm making a spread, so to speak, like casinos do.
Yeah, right.
But you better damn me right on your price. Because if I sell 1 million options to McDonald's for $5.10 and they go to $6, I kind of blew it. You know what I mean?
You're going to end up like Mortimer and his brother, right?
So Mortimer, yeah, exactly.
That's just too stressful for me.
Oh, it was intense.
But it's an adrenaline thing too, right? Huge.
Yeah.
Obviously, right? Got to be.
I won $200 on a slot machine once, and I'm like, I'm done gambling. Like that's it for
My
me.
career is over. So I'm curious, do you still trade then individually or?
No.
You're done. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now you do DraftKings.
Yeah, exactly. Back to the legalized gambling.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
Exactly.
No, that's really cool, man. That's something I've always been fascinated with. It. Wall Street was one of my favorite movies when it came out, and I really thought I was going to go to Wall Street and be an investment banker. So
no way.
Oh yeah, man. I was dead set. I was ready to do it. It didn't quite work out that way, man. But that's really. I mean, I don't know that I could handle the stress. Working as an attorney doing that kind of stuff is one thing, but man, being on the floor and trading, I don't see how you did it. You did it for 10 years?
Yeah. And there were immense stress symptoms that I was feeling that I didn't realize at the time. And so once it all stopped and once I moved back down here to Kentucky.
Left side of my body hurts a lot.
My left arm's numb.
I know. Like I'm a healthy 20-something-year-old and I was going to the doctor for like weird stuff. And I handle stress incredibly well. I thought, but I guess I internalize all of it. But no, it's really fun. I mean, like I joke with Pat Madden, my co-founder on Never Say Die, because that's how we met. He was a trader in Chicago too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So when I moved back to Kentucky, they were like, "Have you met Pat? Because you guys both did the same thing, and you guys would get along." And it really was like a blind date. I went and met him.
No
just
kid.
Like at a Chick-fil-A, no joke. We're hitting it off, talking about trading stories, how we make or lose $1 million, like it was nothing, and it was just crazy.
That's very funny. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to talk about the nose on this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we can combine them together.
Let's do that real quick. Let's talk about I'm sorry about that, Brian. I got into your story, man. So that's awesome. Chad,
I've just been over here enjoying the whiskey. So.
But see, this is great because Matt's not here, but your palate is just as sophisticated as Matt's. So I can just say, Chad.
It is not.
Chad, what do you get on the nose? Go ahead.
Being a longtime listener, while you kind of nerd out on this for a second, no offense. I've been listening to the show, and I'm super excited to like hear just the tasting notes that you guys come up with because you're so damn good at it.
Well,
and,
thanks, man.
So because I'm
These
like,
guys he and Matt are.
yeah, they really are.
Like Matt says, you say anything with enough confidence. It becomes
People
true.
believe you, right? Talking about confidence, right? You just have the confidence to do it. Go ahead, Chad. Sorry, man.
No, he was talking earlier about like a Blanton's or a Weller, something that's like easy to grab,
Yeah.
really good. I get a ton of lemon, orange zest, honey on the nose, nice light baking spice, and mash bill on this. Do you disclose the mash bill?
Yeah, it's 75% corn, 21 rye, 4% malt.
I got it right.
You did. I wanted to make sure because
guess.
it does have this nice breadiness to it, a little toasted bread, a lot of brown sugar and caramel. But man, I love the citrus, the strong citrus on the nose, and the nice sweet honeys. Like that's anytime I can pick something up and pull out like just citrus zest and honey. That's because it goes either way for me. It can be like, it's more of a tea like, or it's kind of
like you. It goes either way.
Speaking of Bourbon Con on Saturday.
Oh wow! Get back to your tasting. Damn.
But no, it's delightful. It's I can smell it several times and get new notes. But no, I quite enjoy the nose a lot.
Yeah, it definitely is. You know, it's funny because this is 21% rye, so I think I was anticipating that to pop out, and it didn't jump out as much as what I thought. When we get to the palate, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Yeah. But and this is 95 proof, right?
It is,
and it's around 6 years old, maybe, or
it's 6 in Kentucky and a year in England.
Okay,
so it's 7.
So it's actually 7. So it does have that age on it, you know. So it's not a corn forward. It's not a young. And I think
not at all.
Sometimes when you think of a newer brand, somehow in your mind you just automatically think, oh, this is young. This is new, you know, not new make, but this is young whiskey. But this isn't. I mean, you guys have aged this for quite a period of time. So yeah, so you're in that age range of a Weller or a Blanton's or something like that. But yeah, I agree with Chad on this. The citrus that pops out. There's like a fruitiness that comes out other than the citrus as well. Almost like maybe like a light cherry as well that comes through to me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
On that, just
I get a lot of cherry when I try it, and pear is like a pear and apple. I've heard like apple pie.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, I can see that. The pear for sure.
That's a good one.
I was watching The Godfather 2, and there's a scene Vito brings home a pear. Anyway, I digress, man. But there was a pear. Pear's been on my mind because of Godfather 2. But yes, the pear note is there for sure. So we'll jump back to conversation again. With regard to, I mean, has whiskey been something? So you're in Chicago. You went to Miami, Ohio. You went to Chicago. Were you a whiskey fan at school, or did it come on? You know, when did you become a whiskey fan? I guess I'm trying to ask.
Jim Beam and Bullet and Maker's Mark was literally that was the extent of, and this is 2001 when I graduated college. So like, you know, nothing really had gone bonkers with bourbon yet, but like there were starting to have some brands out there. Like Pappy was on the shelf, and there was some other stuff. But my roommate, was there, and he's like, actually I lived with like 4 other guys. And the guys that were not from Kentucky were like, you guys don't drink bourbon? Like, what bourbon should we get? Like, we're adults now. And
I love that, like, everyone in college has that experience. Like, we're adults now. Let's get bourbon.
I know. Yeah. Let's stop drinking this shit, man.
No more beer for me.
That's right. I want bourbon.
Right.
That's funny.
And so the guys that weren't from Kentucky were kind of like embarrassed for us that we didn't know more stuff about bourbon. Like they were learning more being like these young professionals in Chicago. So we're like, well, damn, we need to step up our game. Yeah. So like we started going to liquor stores and like picking up, like going to ask the guy who knew what was going on, like what's a good whiskey to pick up. And I picked up like an Eagle Rare.
Oh yeah.
I grabbed a couple like Jefferson's things and like started really getting into it. And it was like the golden age because you could find whatever the hell you wanted.
You could get it on the shelf, and it's reasonably priced, right? I mean, everything was.
Truly. I mean, I have some crazy unicorns that I picked up, like a Jefferson's Presidential with like the red wax on it. I mean, like that you can't get that stuff anymore. It was Stitzelweller whiskey, and like, so that's what really got me into bourbon was moving out of Kentucky, I guess.
Isn't that funny, man? That's wild to think that. Yeah. So then you come back to Kentucky after that, after you stopped trading, I guess then?
Yeah. So that was 2001. And then around 2009, 10, being a floor trader was starting to become obsolete. Like the computers were competing with us pretty darn well. And like the writing was on the wall. So and also the housing collapse had happened with the financially with 2008 and 2009, which was really scary. And so I had actually bought a farm down in southern Illinois just as like an inflation hedge because it had been a good year for trading and I had some cash and I was like, I'm gonna go buy a farm, like just in case everything else blows up and I lose all my money, which I was saying earlier, you can lose $1 million real quick on the floor.
Right.
At least I got the farm, and that was like my thought. So then I started thinking, all right, what's next for my career? Because it's not going to be a trader on the floor, and I definitely don't want to live in Chicago because it's awful weather. I love the city, but like didn't want to raise kids up there or spend winters there. Yeah. So I just came up with a concept of starting a private equity company down in Kentucky, based around growing corn and wheat for the bourbon industry, and grew soybeans too. And so I came down here in 2011 and started up a company called American Farm Investors. Bought a couple farms. I started leasing farms out to the Petersons who grow all the wheat and a lot of the corn for the Maker's Mark. And the Homestead family farm down, and they grow a lot of the corn and wheat for, or mostly the corn for Jim Beam. So just started putting together deals where I go buy farms, help these farmers expand. And that's how I kind of got into the industry, so to speak, was just growing, like buying farms around these distilleries and helping them supply the bourbon boom.
I had no idea, man. I did not know that. That wasn't part of your story at
That was
BourbonCon.
my big surprise. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I love it. You heard it here first on the Bourbon Life Podcast. No, that's really cool, man. That's amazing. I had no idea that you were involved. So obviously you were starting to get into the whiskey industry, even though you weren't on this side of it.
Correct.
I mean, you were connected to the industry from the grain side of things.
Right. And that's kind of how this whole brand started. It was because Pat, my buddy who I told you about, he was a client of mine and was invested in a couple farms. And when he had the idea to start this brand, that was his first call because he's like, Brian, you're the bourbon guy, right? And which is funny because all I did was buy farms that grow corn. I had nothing to do with making
I don't know shit about bourbon, dude. I'm just growing grain. I like to drink it.
Right.
Yeah. That's a big jump from growing grain to running a bourbon brand, right?
Yes, for sure.
But there has to be a lot, not similarities, but the things you learn. Obviously, I mean, you've been able to transfer those, I would assume, over here to the.
Well, you still have to deal with brokers, I'm sure. And,
Yep. I don't know. I think the only skill that really transfers is like entrepreneurial grit, I guess. I mean, frankly, I didn't know much of anything I knew everything about buying farms, and I still do that business, by the way. I mean, I still run that business.
Do you really?
Primarily. Okay. Yeah. It's called American Farm Investors, but it's really more like Kentucky Farm Investors. But we may expand someday. But
you've got that innate ability to take on risk and to be comfortable with that. And that's not something that a lot of people are able to do at all, man. So having the trading background and then jumping into a bourbon brand, there's risk to that. And you've got to be comfortable in your own skin and with everything around you to be able to do that, right?
Yeah. So you're right about that.
Transferable skill right there.
Yeah, it can get you into trouble.
It's like, we don't care. We'll just do whatever, right?
Exactly.
Chad, let's jump back over to the palate and finish, man, because we are almost. I'm sorry, you look like you had a question in your mind.
No, I'm just like wrapping my brain around his story, just like.
That's wild, dude.
It is wild.
I had no idea.
But also at the same point, like, I'm afraid if I lose $5, like, then to think about, like, especially someone else's, like, if I lose 10 of your money, then I'm like, oh, I'm fucked. So to think about him just talking, like, I get it. That's the game. I'm like, damn, that's wild to me that is a thing.
Yeah, it is, man.
Scared money don't make money. That's what we used to say up in Chicago,
that,
man.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not saying you can't make money being cautious, but having that just crazy risk tolerance it's a good way to get rich or broke.
I wouldn't have lasted. Yeah.
You got to be a BSD to make some money, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Chad, let's talk about palate and finish, man.
So palate for me, a lot of the same notes as the nose. Strong citrus, good honey, a lot of stewed fruits like apricot. It's got a little bit of like plum, like some dried, darker fruits like plum, grape. I really enjoy the finish on it. Nice light baking spice. The 95 proof is perfect.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely love the 95. That's kind of it's funny because we always talk about cask strength.
Yeah, yeah.
And more, I'm like, I'm between like that 95 and 110 for like my go-to pour. And this is, perfectly balanced front to back. I really enjoy it. It's still crazy to me. It's 21% rye because it's got such a nice depth to it. Like as far as fruit and sweet goes. The baking spice is kind of mild, but it's there. But honestly, in a blind, I would have thought this was a wheat bourbon. Like
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love all the fruit and the sweet notes.
Yeah.
That's why I compare it to a Weller. When people ask me, which is completely bizarre because Weller's a weeded bourbon, but it definitely there's noticeable rye. So don't make no mistake, this is a rye bourbon, but like it definitely drinks more smooth like a Weller or like one of those weeders. You know what I mean?
I get a little bit of that spiciness on the palate, so that does stand out 21%, which I think people would call that a high rye. I mean, to me, when I think of high rye, I think like 36%, but 21, I guess, qualifies. I do get like a little bit of peppercorn as well on that with the baking spices, a little peppercorn. Yeah. Nice finish, man. It lingers on the palate. Very, very nice. We'll talk about the production process because this is sweet mash, correct?
It is.
Which we'll talk about in round 2 or 3, but we'll get to it. And I like that because I think it drinks. I hate to say smoother. I just hate that word. When you describe
it is what it is.
Soft, but delicate.
But it doesn't, as I get older, I notice that some whiskeys, and I love high proof, man, like 125, 130. But I notice when I drink it sometimes that there will be like that burn. It's more than a Kentucky hug, and it is a burn all the way down. But when I drink sweet mash, it's just like, you get that palate, the finish on your tongue and your palate, and then nothing else. You get a little hug, but there's no burn afterwards. I really like that. But we'll talk about that sweet mash process here in the next round. So, guys, we're at the end of round 1. See how easy that was?
This is a breeze.
You did a great job, man. So let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsor, and we'll be back with more with Brian Luftman with Never Say Die in just a minute.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight live in the Bourbon Life Studios, it is not my good friend, Matt. It is my even better friend, Chad.
Damn, I got a promotion. Hell yeah. That's
What's up, man? How you doing, Chad?
I'm doing great, Marcus. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. We're having a really good time tonight. This is a lot of fun. I was looking forward to I'm glad we got this done. It was short notice to get the show put together, but it's one that I've wanted to do for a while. And after hearing our guests speak at BourbonCon, I was like, yeah, I know we got to do this, man. So it's like serendipitous. This has worked out perfectly. Hopefully we don't get like 8 inches of snow while we're down here tonight, and we all get snowed. But
Mark, you want to take 8 inches anytime you can.
Oh, Jesus, man. We got plenty of whiskey to go around, man.
Yeah, I think we're fine.
We're all good. We can manage. You can get friendly with the cat. He might love you after.
Get cat scratch fever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're the Bourbon Life Podcast. Really presented by nobody right now, but we do love our sponsors. We appreciate all they do for us. So thank you, sponsors. We couldn't bring you guys this great show every week without the support of our sponsors. So thank you, sponsors, for that. Chad, with that said, would you like to remind everybody, just in case somebody just randomly tunes in to 25 minutes into this episode,
yes,
tell everybody who we have
hey,
with us
sometimes YouTube does weird stuff.
You never know, right?
And
people jump
Apple
around.
CarPlay.
Yeah.
But this fine gentleman in front of me in his jockey silks, this is Brian Luftman, co-founder of Never Say Die, and he has brought not just 1, not 2, but 3 delicious whiskeys.
4. I think he's got 4 down there.
Just 3. That fourth one's for your as a gift for you guys.
Gotcha. Yeah. That stays with me, Chad. So just don't even think about it.
Yeah, because you don't have enough bourbon down here.
I don't have enough bourbon down here. Yeah. We'll show after the show. We'll show the floor bourbon and the closet bourbon and everything else.
There used to be a piano bourbon.
There used to be a piano. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah. So, all right. So we're drinking the right. So tell us what we're going to drink on this round if you want. And actually, I'll take the bottle and hold it up while you're discussing it.
You've got the bottle, Mark. Damn.
There you go.
I'm already drinking too much now. Go
ahead. There it is.
All right, go ahead.
That's the Black Label Rye. We debated on whether to put green on there because green is such
the rye color,
yeah, but we've got our brand colors and we're gonna stick with them. I'm wearing them. There's no green on this jacket.
Love it.
Nice.
It is what it is. But this is 105 proof rye.
Nice.
It's 6 years old. It was 5 years in Kentucky, 1 year in England. Took an ocean trip in the barrel over to England. We'll explain that why later.
Yeah.
But it's 105 proof. It's only 56% rye, 33% corn, 11 barley. So it's a Kentucky rye.
Yeah.
And I mean, like if you're a bourbon drinker trying to get into the rye, like this is a really good gateway drug because it's not a 95% rye like Bullet or so it'll have a lot more sweetness to it, but man, it's an unmistakable rye. Like it's got the real kick and the spice and the intrigue of a rye.
Chad, what do you pick up on the nose? You already drink it. I haven't even had a drink, but what do you get on the nose, man?
The nose is fantastic. So on the nose, get a little bit of clove, good bubblegum notes. It's got this nice, like, juicy fruit, tropical, like grilled pineapple. Still got the honey, like from the bourbon. It's retaining these nice honey, sweet, decadent, like fruit notes. I mean, it's crazy to me because, like Brian said, bourbon drinkers who want to get into a rye, nosing this, it noses like a high rye bourbon. Yeah. It doesn't nose, like he said, it's not a big, robust, huge 95.5. You're not getting a lot of dill, earthy, no straw, hay. It's not got those like dirt notes to it or anything. It is a really decadent, really fruit-forward tropical rye.
Yeah.
For me on the nose. Very crisp, almost effervescent, and I really enjoy it. At 105 proof, it doesn't come across too brash or anything. It's
not at all, man.
It noses well under 105.
Yeah,
like it's so soft.
I keep going back and looking at my nose because I'm like, wait, 105? I'm like, no, that's like not 105. The bubblegum, dude, I love that because to me, it's that Topps baseball card. I don't know if you remember that. When you're a kid, you open the pack and you get the bubblegum in,
and it shatters into 15 pieces.
Yeah,
you try and chew it, and it becomes
you get that white shit, that powder all over your fingers. But the gum is like, this is good for like 30 seconds, right? But that aroma, that flavor, that smell, that's the type of bubble gum I get off of this. I get a nice rich sugar flavor, like a brown sugar as well. That comes through very light and fruity. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, very bourbon-esque, almost like a Four Roses type of bourbon or something, right?
It does, yeah. It's definitely got that, like that florality, fruity.
The floral, fruity, like one of I don't know which recipe it is from Four Roses, but that's what it.
Too many.
Kind of reminds me of that. But it is a rye, so that's very cool. But yeah, I mean, I could see where if someone is a bourbon drinker and they say, oh, I don't like rye. I mean, this would be perfect to say, oh, let me introduce you to something that you'd probably change your mind, right? So
I hear a lot of that, and 50% of people that do try it, even there's a lot of people that say I only drink bourbon or I don't like ryes, and I still push them to drink this. 50% of them are like, okay, I do like that rye, and some of them are like, I still don't like rye. Really? So it is a rye. Like I can tell, like they're.
I think what's fun, and I've done tastings in the past where I blind people. What am I drinking? You're drinking whiskey. It's brown water. Just drink it. The amount of people who say they don't like rye but don't know that they're drinking rye will typically love rye. So like if you do tastings and people are, what am I drinking? You never say die, and just leave it at that. See how many people will then change to be like, oh, I love that.
That's a great point. Yeah. There's a lot of people that say they don't like mayonnaise, but if you put mayonnaise on their sandwich, they'd probably like it better and they wouldn't know it was on there.
I do not like mayonnaise. I will say that.
What?
Dude, it's pus in a jar. I don't
give me some Dukes on anything, man. I'll take it, man. Give me some Dukes.
That's one of those I can't do.
Me and Will Levis, man. You know what? We're mayonnaise guys. I can't eat the banana and the banana peel like Will Levis can, but I'll do mayo. I don't know. That just, anyway.
Weird.
Not even going to go down that path. So let's talk about the bourbon. Let's talk about the story because it is such a great story. And just, because it's a big story. There's a lot to it, man. So do you just,
there are.
Brian, just
a lot of layers.
Yeah.
Can I brag on that rye real quick before we get?
Yeah, man. Absolutely. For sure.
Like, because it was special. We were tasting it in the barrel. And I was, man, this is going to maybe be one of the best ryes on the market. Like, I was super excited about it. In fact, my partners let me sign the bottle. So my autograph is on the front of that one. Pat, my partner, is on the bourbon, but that's my autograph on the rye. Yeah. But we submitted it to San Fran, the cojones to submit it to San Fran for the World Spirits competition before we even launched it, like in April last year. And because we were like, let's just see if we can get a gold medal before we even hit the market. And it won double gold with a 97 score.
Wow.
So like
that's
literally
awesome. That's crazy. Yeah.
Every judge, every celebrity judge, Minnick, all the like Ivy Mix, all these like celebs were out there and they all gave it a gold, it's really hard to get double gold in San Francisco. So anyway, that's what I wanted to. And by the way, Esquire magazine said that that's the best whiskey in the world in an old fashioned. So anyone that's listening to this, they want to make an old fashioned with a rye, like pick up a bottle of NSD because it's it's when
we get to the palate and the finish for sure, man. We'll talk about that impact as well from that rye, but But yeah, I don't know. I could see that. But now,
But back to your story question.
yeah. But real quick,
Yeah.
Did your small batch, was it the one that was like Forbes whiskey? Of
Yeah. So before
best-
we even launched the rye, Forbes magazine shocked us by calling our bourbon the best bourbon in the world. Which,
Okay.
you know, I
Hell
mean,
yeah.
someone said the same thing about McKenna a few years ago. And I mean, frankly,
Right,
it
right.
should probably be Pappy most years. I mean, there's a lot of best bourbons in the world. But Forbes said that we were the best in the world in 2023.
That's awesome, man. That's huge, man.
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, I don't know if I agree, but if one person thinks so and they tell the world about it,
But here's the thing, man. You got a small batch and you get that accolade.
Yeah.
You get a rye, you get double gold. So, you know, and I said it earlier in the first round talking about the Bourbon Con thing that there was almost was like a buzz about you guys. You know, there were all these people in this room to hear you speak. And this is a brand, I know it's not new. We'll talk about the creation of the brand here in a few minutes, but it's not necessarily new, but for a lot of people, it is new. They're not familiar with it. And to have that kind of turnout and that kind of response, I mean, obviously, people are talking about it, right?
Love
So,
it.
Yeah, so that's great. So, okay, back to your story. Sorry about that.
yeah. Well, this is gonna. I guess I'll just dig into it. You guys can enjoy the whiskey because it takes a minute.
I was gonna say we'll just sit here and listen to you, and if I have questions, I'll just
Yeah, I
jump
got the
in.
bottle right
I'll
here,
just
so-
interrupt you. We'll pour more, and we can just listen to you talk.
I will go
This
ahead
is the
and
Brian
pop
Luftman podcast, brought to you by Never Say
No
Die.
sponsors,
Rye
trust me.
Whiskey. Yeah, no sponsors, and Never Say Die. There you go.
So yeah, Pat calls me in 2015, and he's like, Brian, I just got back from the Derby with my college roommate who's from England, and with the Kentucky Derby, and they watched American Pharoah win it. And he's like, I was telling David about this story of this horse that was born on Hamburg Farm, and David, being from England, is like in love with the story because it has English ties. And he's like, by God, Brian, we should make a bourbon called Never Say Die. and so David's in love with the idea. And so I'll tell you the story that Pat told me, and then you guys tell me if you would have done the crazy thing that I did, which is drop a lot of what you were working on and really dig in on
Jump
this
in,
brand.
yeah.
So in 1951, and by the way, we're sitting in Mark's basement.
That's right.
In Hamburg in this recording studio. But Hamburg, where we live and where we are right now, and it used to be a horse farm.
Right.
And now it's like got Dick's Sporting Goods and Meyer and beautiful
Wine.
neighborhoods.
Total Wine. It's got all sorts
Yeah.
of stuff. But yeah, so it used to be a huge farm. The
Yeah.
Madden family.
The Madden family, who threw the famous Derby party in
big
Louisville.
Derby.
Or sorry,
Here,
about the
no, it was
Kentucky
here,
Derby.
yeah.
It was here.
Yeah.
And so Pat calls me with this, and he tells me the story. And so in 1951, here on Hamburg Farm, there was a champion pedigree horse being born in the middle of the night. They had spent a lot of money on the breeding for it, and it has a terrible birth. And the main horse guy gets called into the barn. They're like, we think we're going to lose this horse. It broke some ribs on the way out. It's got a faint heartbeat. It's barely breathing. And his name was John Abel III. They ended up naming a horse. He built his own horse farm out in southern Kentucky and called John Abel Farm, which you may have heard of.
Yeah.
But John Bell was the leasing agent or the lessee, I guess, of Hamburg Farm at the time. And so he comes in, the big dog comes in, pulls a bottle of bourbon out of his off the shelf and dumps bourbon down the horse's throat like his newborn. To try to get the heart to like snap into it, and it works. Like the horse just jumps up, his heart starts racing, and he runs around the barn, and then he goes to bed.
That happens to me sometimes too.
Right?
So my wife would be like,
It's like a shot of Narcan.
yeah, exactly right. It's like, are you dead?
Pulp Fiction, you know.
Exactly. Get the breastplate.
Yeah.
So the horse lives through the night, and they appropriately named him Never Say Die, which is really cool, right?
Right.
So 3 years later, and by the way, I mean, like, I'm already in. Like, I'm like, Pat, let's make a bourbon called Never Say Die. It's life-saving stuff, right?
Right.
So 3 years later, this horse is actually fulfilling its promise, and it's like a really good racer. But he's good on the turf. So he's a grass turf racer rather than the dirt that's famous here in Kentucky. So they send him over to England because that's where all the big turf races are. And he enters a couple of stakes races and he wins a couple. And they're like, screw it. This guy's got some legs. Let's put him in the Epsom Derby, the English Classic. It's the biggest horse race in the world. Like literally the Queen goes every year. 250,000 people. Think about that. Like
crazy.
Almost double the size of the current day Kentucky Derby.
Everybody wears their top hats and their,
Yeah, well, sort of. Well, yeah. There's a whole Queen stand where everybody's all dressed up, but then there's also like gypsies that are out in tents, and like there's a city fair in the middle of it. It's like a festival. It's bonkers.
Gotcha.
We went to it last year, and that's where we launched our bourbon over there in England. It's a really crazy experience. It was badass.
Yeah.
But so anyway, they enter this horse, Never Say Die, this American underdog, they couldn't even find a jockey for him. So because like no horse has won that race, no American horse since 1870 something. So like it's been an 80-year drought for anyone outside of England. And they find this young kid who's 18 years old named Lester Piggott, which is relevant, and I'll tell you, because he ends up becoming the greatest jockey in English racing history, like the GOAT. But and so they throw Lester Piggott on top of this American underdog, 33-1 odds. Meanwhile, Queen Elizabeth is in her box with the favorite in the race, and Winston Churchill's sitting right next to her. Like, unreal, right? And Lester Piggott is wearing this exact jacket.
There you
go. So, not this exact jacket. Sorry, this is a replica. Because it
is the same one. It still smells from Lester.
right. So these colors, and boom, he shoots by all of them at the finish line. You can watch it on YouTube, which is really cool. Okay. Like you can just type in 1954 or Never Say Die Epsom Derby, and like you can watch the whole thing. It's cool. You see the Queen, Winston Churchill there with the binoculars watching the horse, and like with the call. It's badass. So like definitely check that out. So he runs past everybody, becomes the first American born champion in 80 years, and really changes racing history, of course, but like changes breeding, the scope of breeding. Like a lot of breeding was going on over in England, and that's where they thought the best bloodstock was to produce a turf racing horse.
Yeah, and then an American horse comes over.
And the Queen sees that on her like first or second Derby, and she's like, screw it, I'm going over to America and start breeding. So she came to the Derby a ton of times.
I was going to say, she was
a huge fan of Kentucky.
Yep, that's right.
So that changed the world in that way. But do you want to talk about the whiskey a little bit more, or should I just finish the story?
Finish the story, man. I'm enjoying it. We got plenty of time, man. So
all right.
Don't you worry about us. We're just drinking.
All right. But we're hanging out.
So the craziest part of the story, if there can be a crazier part, is, and we commemorate this on our bottle. I'll hold it up to the camera. Maybe you should, Mark.
Yeah,
you're a pro. But the side of the bottle is perforated to look like a ticket. So the side of the label.
Yep.
And it's because there's a famous bet. It's to commemorate a very famous bet, maybe the most famous bet in horse racing history. And this woman in Liverpool hears about this American horse named Never Say Die, and life was saved by bourbon. And she's like, oh my God, how can I? It has this premonition, like never say die. That's my attitude. And she goes and pawns all of her jewelry, makes a huge bet, and takes a swing and goes to a bookie and bets everything she has on Never Say Die at 33-1 odds. Like imagine that kind of bet. Like I never made a bet like that in Chicago.
Yeah, that's huge.
And so of course she wins. And what does she want to do with her money? Her one dream is to build a music club because her son's a drummer and he's got all these friends and they don't have anywhere to play. So she goes and buys this old Victorian house in downtown Liverpool. And she wants to build a coffee club, traveling musicians like club. Yeah. So in the basement, she decides to build the club, and she tells her son, Peter Best is his name, hey, if you and your friends want to be do you know?
I recognize that name. Yeah,
I'm sure quite a few people who are listening to this are like, oh my God, Peter Best. Like, So she tells Peter, hey, you and your friends can paint the walls, and you can be the first gig of the Casbah Coffee Club, and all funded with Never Say Die's winnings, of course. And his friends are Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison. And they played there for weeks, maybe months. And then they went on to Hamburg and played Peter was their drummer. Peter Best was the drummer. Their
Ringo.
The Quarrymen drummer, until they changed their name to the Beatles and kicked Peter out for whatever reason. Yeah. And there's speculation of a lot of things on that. But and then Ringo was their drummer, and the rest is history. But if it weren't for some horse being born here, maybe like literally where we're sitting in Hamburg.
Isn't that just crazy, dude?
I
mean, I love the story.
Maybe the Beatles never existed.
They never would have gotten their start, right?
Right.
You never know, right? So
don't inflate Mark's ego. He's going to feel personally responsible for the Beatles.
Because I live here on Hamburg Farms in my house.
Decades after it happened.
That's right. I'm responsible for the Beatles, man. I taught Paul McCartney how to play bass guitar, by the way.
God.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You with your headless Washburn. Yeah.
Oh, man. But that's all. No, I love the story. And that's what bourbon to me is all about. It's about cool stories. It's about fun stories. And you guys tie that in too with the way the whiskey is done, how you guys do things. And we'll talk about that. We will get into that in the third round.
That's fine.
Because I think we need to talk about the palate and the finish. Yeah. So, hey, guess what, Chad?
What's up, Mark?
I'm going to throw it to you. What do you get on the palate and the finish on this?
Well, I basically had to top my glass off because I was going through my first one so fast. But, man, I get a lot of like honeygram, the same bubblegum notes as on the nose. Finish is incredible. Like I took a sip about a minute ago. I still got some of those flavors in my palate. Yeah. Really good baking spice notes. It's crazy to me it's 105 proof because it's just so soft, so delicate. So rich. It's a very, very dense mouthfeel, very syrupy. Like, I don't know. It's very rare that I come into like just a rye whiskey. 'Cause I think I like rye better than bourbon. Typically, like if I'm pouring something most of the time, especially
Blasphemer.
I do. And he said something earlier that, you want to talk about, really good ryes in an old fashioned. This has like that orange bitter, and it sounds weird to say because like, people don't just drink orange bitters.
Right.
But it has the aroma, like the flavor, the aroma of orange bitters, orange peel. It almost tastes like if you put this on ice, you could tell me it's an old fashioned. Like straight up.
I get it.
Yeah.
Never heard anyone say that, but I like that. Yeah.
No, I mean, you could trick me with this.
Yeah, citrus and cherry. I mean, we've been talking about it.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, and I agree, Chad, and I love the fact that this has it is a bourbon drinker's rye. I mean, because as a bourbon drinker, I love rye, but this is just right in that wheelhouse for someone who has never been a rye fan. They could drink this. Yes, you do get that rye spiciness, and it's more prominent, obviously, than the small batch because the rye is higher percentage wise, and you feel that. But man, there's so many different things on it. I get that sugary note. I talked about it, like a brown sugary sweetness, the fruitiness that comes through. I almost got like almost like a tea type of flavor on the palate finish as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got that.
Like a honey, like a sun tea, like a lemon tea. Yeah, absolutely.
So, a little bit of that herbalness that comes through from the rye.
Maybe that's a year in England.
There it is.
Tea.
It's the year in England. You guys, it's an infused. No, it's not been infused.
No,
I'm just kidding. So, anything else on that in terms of what you drink and what you like about the rye? Was there any other notes or anything that stand out to you? That
you guys didn't bring up there's a noticeable mint flavor to our rye that I've noticed. Less pine and more mint. For whatever reason, you guys didn't bring that up, but like maybe you're not catching it, or I mean, there's tons of tasting notes. But that's one that like people catch on the finish quite often.
Gotcha. To me, it comes across almost like that. Like I said, like a herbal tea kind of.
Yeah, maybe that's
almost like a tea kind of. It's not necessarily minty.
It's pretty close,
but
though.
Yeah. So, what do you think, Chad?
No, I could see, like, I appreciate, like you said, not pine. I'm not real big in, like, the super heavy resiny, like those kind of profiles. For me, I see where you can get mint. Like, now that you say mint, I see where mint could come from. But I think that's, like, where it's so fresh, it hits more of the tea notes, or just, it's, like I said on the nose, kind of effervescent. Like, it kind of, like, jumps out at you. But, like, the flavor jumps out at you. But I do think it is a unique profile for rye. Also sweet mash, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, which is very cool. Oh, so this is sweet mash. I don't think okay. That's very good. So,
every bottle in Never Say Die is made same distillery, sweet mash process.
Okay.
It all ages in Kentucky to maturity, to where we feel like we're ready to send it over to England, because it slows down the process quite a bit when we send it over to England.
Yeah,
I mean, and then you lose those humid days and the hot heat and the fluctuations that Kentucky is so famous for. And you put it in a dank warehouse in England, and like then we could age it for 10 more years.
Keep it in there forever, right?
What's the ambient temperature in like England?
I mean, it never gets below 35 Fahrenheit, and it never goes really much above 70, but most of the time is like 55, 60.
Damn.
Count on it.
I don't know if I could live in that environment. Now, I love Manchester United football, so I could go over there and watch that.
I would love that kind of weather. That's why I like
you like the Pacific Northwest, so that makes sense. So one question I was going to ask you back when we were talking about the small batch, and this is a rye whiskey, so I'm assuming this is also a batch of barrels, right? It's not a single barrel. So when you're doing these batches, and this is, how many batches have you guys put out on this? Do you know?
I think that's probably our 5th or 6th batch, maybe their 8th.
Is this the first rye?
That's the first rye.
Okay. So I'm just curious, when you're batching, is there a certain number of barrels you say, we're going to use this many barrels, or is it just how you're going through the process and you're like, okay, we ended up with 6 barrels or 5 barrels or 10 barrels or...
Yeah. I mean, everything's intentional. Like Never Say Die wore the number 5 in that race. So 5's kind of our magic number.
Okay.
That's why our proof is 95 on the bourbon, but we like that range. And then 105 on the... And we used 10 barrels. We were going to use 5. It really wasn't quite enough to get like enough of a dynamic flavor into the bourbon where we could repeat it often.
Right. Yeah.
So we ended up doubling that and making it 10. But yeah, every Never Say Die blend is 10 barrels.
Okay. So are you doing it, because you kind of mentioned this in terms of the flavor profile. Are you trying to blend to that same profile every time, or is it just kind of you're going with the fluctuations that happen?
It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, like
with 10 barrels, I'm sure it's got to be hard to.
Yeah, and I mean
that.
But plus, like this is something Kentucky bourbons don't do that wine does, is like different vintages.
Yes. Yeah.
And like, so some of our batches have mostly 2017 barrels, but then we're going to start mixing in 2018s, and like, good luck trying to get the same exact. What's cool is we actually put serial numbers on every bottle of Never Say Die. So like, if you look in the bottom right side down there, there's like a red number, and it started at 00001.
Oh,
right?
okay.
And that bottle's sitting in Pat's office here in Hamburg.
Gotcha.
And so, what number is that rye right there?
1233.
Okay, so that's a 1200th bottle of rye that we've ever produced in America. There's different numbers in UK, but it says NSD US on there for the rye.
Yep.
And so that's a way for we can kind of track, the vintages and like what the blends are.
Sure.
And so, but yeah, it's always going to be somewhat changing. I mean, it's impossible to keep it the same, but our blenders are pretty darn good.
Which is cool, and I appreciate that. It's funny because I think the first person I ever really heard talk about that was, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on. I have to come back to that because
we're getting old.
I know it's like I could see him. I'm gonna have to come back to that because I'm drawing a blank. Sean Josephs with Pinhook. Yeah, man. So Sean was one of the first ones we had on the show that was really going through that with us and talking about the vintage, because he's a wine guy, or he started out as a wine guy, talking about the different, we're just blending and we're going to let each year kind of do its own thing.
I like that.
And to me, it was like, what a cool concept. I mean, I never thought about it because I think as a Kentuckian, you grow up with bourbon, you buy Maker's Mark from 1985. It tastes the same in 1988. It tastes the same in 2000. Really, things stay the same. And not that there's anything wrong with that. You want consistency in your brands, but the fact that you're shaking your head. What?
No, I'll say like there's nothing wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with that. But I love the fact that brands like Pinhook and like you guys doing this, that you're blending and allowing those barrels to kind of just do their thing. And if it fluctuates from what you had before, so be it, right?
So be it.
Yeah, I love that. No, that's really cool. Well, guys, we're at the end of round 2. I think we did a good job. We got through that one, man. That's awesome. Yeah, great story. I love this story, man. And the fact that horse probably walked right over my backyard.
Mark Rucker is the reason why the Beatles broke up.
That's going to be from here on out, man.
Yeah, I know.
It. So, guys, all right, let's take a quick break. Get a word from our sponsor. We'll be back with more with Brian Luftman, but Never Say Die in just a minute. Welcome to the kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company, where every visit is a celebration of tradition and flavor. Did you know that the kitchen table is nestled right within the heart of the distillery? That's right. You can experience the essence of James B. Beam's legacy while savoring their delectable dishes. Join them every Wednesday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. for a culinary journey like no other. Planning a special event? Let the kitchen table be your host, creating unforgettable memories for you and your guests. And don't miss their upcoming Valentine's Day dinner on February 14th, featuring a 4-course meal highlighting the best of the kitchen table. For more information and reservations, visit beamdistilling.com. The kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company. Come as a friend, leave as family. All right, everybody, welcome back to the third and final, sadly, round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight, live in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement, it is my better friend, Chad. Chad, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I love that title. And I need like a Letterman
The Better
jacket.
Friend.
Yeah, The Better Friend.
Get a t-shirt that just says The Better Friend.
That's like a weird rock group from the 90s, The Better Friend.
Yeah, I can hear it right now, man.
Yeah.
Come up with some song. You're a guitar player. I got my bass.
Yeah.
I got my bass in there, man. We'll hammer something out tonight.
We should.
Got the electronic drums, the keyboard, man. We're good.
Hell yeah. Do you play anything, Brian?
I could play a few songs of piano.
There you go.
See,
There you go,
keyboards.
man.
Yeah,
We got the keyboard. We're set, man. The Bourbon Life. No, we got to come up with a better name. Never Say Die.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
There you go.
It's called NSD.
That'll work. Oh man. See, I blew the whole thing. I've already talked to our guest before we introduced him. Not that anybody
We have.
just tuned. If you randomly tuned in to the third round of the Bourbon Life Podcast, we're having a great time. But Chad, tell everybody who we have with us tonight.
We've got Brian Luftman, co-founder of Never Say Die, and sadly, it is our third and final round.
Yeah.
We are actually. I will let Brian. I don't want to spoil it because this is a very special pour that only a few people in the States have had a chance to try. So,
Right.
Brian, tell us what we're drinking, man.
Yeah, I don't want to get people too excited about this one because you can't get it in America. and
No,
you won't.
that means you
Psych.
should hype it the most.
I'm so sorry.
I guess, but you're like we're like committed to not having this available in America at least this year, maybe not next year. And,
Okay.
And what we want to do is, if we ever launch it here, because it's kind of like a Blanton's Gold right now, where you can't get it in America and you can get it in Europe, right? Well, this is our barrel proof. It's a single barrel, and maybe in a couple years we'll launch it in America. And if we do, it'll be only on allocation to the retailers, bars, restaurants, podcasts, people that helped us get to where it was like hard to find. You know what I mean? Like who helped us get our start.
Yeah.
Because this is a cool story, and it means the world to us, people helping getting the word out to people. So maybe in a couple years we'll bless the States with this product. But for now, the only way to get it is to go travel over to England and pick it up, or to sneak around or like the internet and see if you can find it on a British website and send it to America.
Oh yeah.
So, which is possible. But this is our 8th barrel pick that we've done. And so I'll get into the business plan of our bourbon a little bit in a sec, but every shipping container that goes over to England has 86 barrels on it, or give or take a few, 85. That's how many will fit without going overweight. And we pick 4 barrels. And now, like at BourbonCon, you guys were at my show, and one guy brought up like, "Hey, why don't you use 5 barrels?" And actually, because that's your magic number.
Yeah.
And so from now on, it's 5. Like that guy was brilliant. So
Okay, good. I remember that point. I was like,
he's listening,
I know,
like he changed our lives.
I know. It's like, because I could see the expression on your face. You're like,
It's like, bro, that's
good.
good.
Why didn't we think about that, right? Yeah. Okay. We're doing 5 now.
5 now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is barrel number 8. Our team over there in England tastes through all of them, and then they pick their favorite 8. Again, or not again, but like what's important to note is like there's a lot of really good barrels that go into Never Say Die, but they have like really unique notes of like there's a whole lot of that citrus, or there's a whole lot of that honey, but they don't have the other notes. So you're trying to hit all those notes, but every once in a while you grab a barrel that has most of them. You know what I mean? It tastes like a Never Say Die barrel. It drinks alone. It's a standalone barrel that has high quality. And so this is one of those. This is barrel 8, and you guys can dig in and give it a
Chad,
sniff.
you know what I'm going to do, man? I'm going to throw it to you. You're writing notes over there. What are you picking up?
I am. Well, I started writing notes before we started recording, whenever we poured it up, and then we started talking, and I forgot to nose it and write notes. But man, I'm getting a lot. For me, the theme tonight across the board has been a lot of citrus. So I'm getting like lemon meringue pie.
Okay.
Like I'm getting like that nice whipped cream, like a vanilla whipped cream note. Really good pie crust, like a really good toasted graham crackery note. Good honeysuckle, toasted bread, tart cherry, brown sugar, some tobacco. It's the whole package. 121 proof, right?
Yeah, 121. Yeah,
121 proof. There's like almost no ethanol to it.
not at all, dude.
It's got a little bit of a punch, but it's not like it's not an alcohol punch. It is just, hey, here's straight from the barrel. This is a high proof bourbon, but no, this is a great nose, and this is one of those pours where like I wish this is a candle. Like, how can I make this a candle? I want to smell this every day, all day.
Yeah, I like the fact this is like. It's the same mash bill, right? Mm-hmm. Same mash bill as the small batch that we had earlier. So it's the 75-21-4.
Right.
So you get those same note. We talked about the florality, the fruitiness, all that stuff. I mean, it's like all that just intensified, And the proof point, yes, 121 does not nose. It does not come across ethanol. I'm not. Of course, this bottle has obviously been worked over. Yeah. So, but still in the glass, even pouring it out. I'm not picking up that huge, ethanol. It's not burning out my nose by any stretch of the imagination. But getting that nice floral notes, those nice fruitiness that we talked about before on that small batch, but just really intensified significantly. I still get those like the brown sugary notes. The cherry that I talked about on the small batch comes through on this for me as well. Just a lot of nice bourbon type notes, right? So, anything else?
I mean, my team over there, like Nathan Dawes is in the head of N10 Bourbons, and they're our distributor over in England and all of Europe for that matter. But he has a whole team that does the tasting and of all these barrels and the indexing and the blends and I'm so glad that we met him. He distributed for quite a few. He distributes currently for quite a few craft kind of smaller boutique brands like ours. Over in Europe, and so he picked. Whenever he picks a barrel, I'm just like, all right, I'm in.
That's it.
Yeah,
I'm good.
So you're tasting one right now.
Yeah. So let's talk about. It's funny because we've your brand, the way you do things is very unique, and it's like I'm sorry that we take it to the third round to kind of get to that, but getting to know you and your story, getting to know the story behind the brand is really cool as well. But let's talk about the brand itself and how you guys function. Let's talk about how it started. you mentioned that Pat called you, but kind of talk about that process and then how you guys came up with this whole idea of what you do and how you do it.
Yeah, so I mean, we didn't know what we were gonna. We just knew we wanted to make a bourbon called Never Say Die. That was the end of it. We didn't know what it was gonna look like. We didn't know even that the colors existed. That we could figure out this could be our brand colors and all that stuff. Like we even considered going over to England and building
the colors. Yeah, they're on the label there. So.
There you go. We decided. We even thought about going over to England and making a bourbon style whiskey, not calling it a bourbon because it was made in England, and just have a distillery over there. I mean, everything was on the table.
Damn.
But then when I met with Pat and Shane down in Danville, the two distillers that are my partners in this brand, and they were the founders of a distillery down there in Danville that were making really good sweet mash stuff, and asked them about whether they would make us a custom mash bill. They were like, hell yeah, and we want to be partners with you. So like they made us.
Yeah, they're partners with you guys on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and they made every barrel that we've had that we haven't bought or sourced. And it was really hard. Like we made our first barrel in 2017, and to sit there and watch the bourbon boom just go on. Yeah. And how many years have you guys been doing this podcast?
Started in 2020, so now we're 5 years in.
Okay,
our 6th season. Yeah.
So I mean, that sounds like forever ago, right?
Yeah, for sure.
3 years before that, we made our first barrel. Like I mean, it was just
crazy.
Like painful to like sit there and watch this boom happen. But we knew we were making something exceptional, so we were just willing to wait. So we waited for 6 years, and we shipped, well, not 6, 5 years, shipped our first barrels over to England. That was our whole plan, was we had to keep this authentic to this British, America to British story, the way the horse did.
Right.
And so then we just came up with this plan of let's ship the barrels over after they've aged in Kentucky, and we think we'll make the best whiskey here in Kentucky anyway. Why would we make it over in England? That's stupid. Like we're in bourbon country. So that's what we've done. They just here for 6 years, and then the funny thing is it came time to ship our first barrels over, and we're like, okay, let's go find a rick house over there in England. Well, think about that. Like how stupid. Like that's just like life. You don't.
How many rick houses are there in the rolling hills of England?
None. like Pat and I were about to go get on a plane and like build one legit.
Were
like,
you really?
Oh yeah, because we didn't know what the hell to do. But then we started networking around and found a small distillery that was making single malt, and they were buying like deconstructed barrels from Heaven Hill. And like, imagine that they take all the staves out of a barrel, take it all apart,
holy shit, and then put them back together,
and then have to put them all back together. They dry out. So when I called Max at White Peak Distillery up, it's north of Nottingham and Sheffield, but south of Manchester. So it's like the north central part of England. And Max, like we were music to his ears. He was like, "Oh man, I've been buying these deconstructed barrels and re-putting them together. You mean I can store your barrels for you, bottle for you, and then keep the empty wet barrels? Like what a dream!"
Yeah.
So that's the deal that we've had with him, and it's great. I mean, people have a place in England to go visit and see the Never Say Die, like part of the story over there.
Hell
We don't
Because
have, like,
your bottles are available there, right? Which is
yeah. I mean, not like Max is pumping his own stuff, White Peak, which is a really fancy.
But I mean, in England, this is available.
Oh yeah, we launched the brand in England first.
Yeah,
To be honest, I never thought we would. I really did not think we would launch the brand in America for years.
We didn't talk about that, did we? Yeah,
No,
I don't think people don't know that, right? That you guys launched in England first.
Oh yeah, at the Epsom Derby in 2022.
Yeah.
Like it was a good 18 months before we ever launched it here in the U.S. And frankly, like I said, I didn't think we would. When it became abundantly clear to me that British people like the British bourbon fans love Never Say Die, but there's just not that many British bourbon fans. And it was just like, man, we got to bring this to America. Like Americans love whiskey, and I have so many people that love this story here. Let's just get the word out. So we pivoted. But it was launched in England first, and the rye was launched in England a year before it was launched here. So that's like our primary market, and what we want to be known as like the favorite bourbon of England.
Yeah. And we talked about this a little bit off camera, but at BourbonCon, you were talking about that because on the website, I think it says it's England's bourbon.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't say that. Maybe it does. If it does,
I think I saw that somewhere. Maybe it wasn't on the website. Maybe you said that and I heard that.
Well, no, it's okay it's not okay because the KDA, the Kentucky Distillers Association, asked us politely, and we've been trying to comply with it, where they were like, "Hey, can you not call it England's bourbon because it's really an American bourbon, right?" And we're like, "Yeah, it is. You're right."
Yeah.
And they don't want anyone taking possession of the word bourbon. It's an American product. Yeah. And so we're trying to make England's favorite bourbon, or the bourbon, like the favorite bourbon of England, whatever wordplay you can come up with. And it's all well known that like it's still made in Kentucky, and the KDA isn't really that mad at us.
Because it says Kentucky Straight Bourbon on the label.
Bingo.
So anybody that sees it knows what it is. But I mean, I think it's really cool that The transport. So are you transporting the barrels, or are you tanking them? Or you're actually doing barrels?
No, we got to do it the right way.
Okay.
So
All right.
it's
okay.
Back to that, like you brought up tea. Like I was at a tasting over in England, and this guy was like explaining our process. He was a mixologist who was given the talk at a dinner that I was at about Never Say Die, which is cool. I just got to sit there and be a fan.
Yeah, listening.
And he was like, and this is a British guy, and he's like, have you ever made a cup of tea and just let the tea bag just sit there? Like, it'll make tea, but if you stir it, it'll make tea really fast. And he was like, that's what they're doing with this bourbon. Like, it could just sit there and you're going to get all those notes of the oak and the sugars and everything like that. But like, they take it on the ocean, it sloshes around for 6 weeks on the trip over to England, and then gets on a container truck and drives over to White Peak Distillery, and they unload it. So these barrels are moving so much more than the typical barrel in any warehouse in Kentucky. And man, what a difference. I mean, it really makes a huge difference.
So once it's in England, well, you get to six weeks, right? Transport.
That's about door to door. It's like 8 weeks, but we think it's like 3, 4, 5 at sea.
So obviously that has an impact on it. But then you get over there to England, and you're going. Is it a dunnage? I mean, is it like a single story, like dirt floor or wood floor, or
it's a cement old brick building with airflow?
Is it okay? All right, interesting. So what if you guys, in terms of, I was curious about this in terms of the maturation effect, because it's there for a year, so it's not a long period of time. But can you tell a difference between once it's there, when it gets there, versus after a year, what the impact has been?
I'll be honest, I haven't tried it all 3 steps of the way.
Okay, all right,
so
gotcha.
I've only tried before it ships and then after it's bottled. And so we haven't, I really should try post-shipment.
There needs to be an NSD experimental line.
There you go. Or you just need to have friends come over to England with you to taste the barrels when
I
you get
can
there.
ride on a boat and watch them. It's like, damn it, Chad, the wine gallons on this barrel went down. Hey, I don't know what to tell you, man. I have no idea what happened here.
Yeah, but it definitely makes it, I mean, there's an absolute difference. I think it smooths out the flavor. I really do. And I know you said don't use the word smooth in bourbon because everyone's uses it, but like I really do think it mellows it out. Yeah. And frankly, I think we could age a barrel over there for 15, 20 years.
Oh, sure.
And it wouldn't get overaged. Like that's what's really cool about it. Like it really, and that's why Scotch is so exquisite at like 20, 30 years old.
Right.
Where you could never do that to a bourbon. And that's maybe, I mean, who knows, maybe someday Never Say Die has a 30-year and we're the only people that have a 30-year bourbon that's any good. So
see, I wondered about that because I know like Buffalo Trace, they have their experimental warehouse X or whatever it's called. And they've got some barrels and they're shooting, I think for 50 years or something like that, but they're, it's controlled environment, right?
Right. And they re-gauge them. So they'll take them as they lose volume. They'll re-barrel, like combine the barrels. So
I was just thinking about that. I'm like, you guys could probably put it over there because Scotch, you can run 30, 50 years on a Scotch, man. Yeah. So, which is insane. And I just wondered, could you do that with a bourbon? Could you take a barrel? Would it hold up? You know, I'm assuming it would because most Scotch is ex-bourbon barrels anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So they can stand the fluctuation. Not that there's much temperature, but there's a lot of the humidity and things in there. So. Yeah, I mean, that would be really cool, man, to go.
I think we're going to give it a shot. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be pretty awesome, for sure, man. Chad, let's jump back over to the palate and finish on this one.
Absolutely.
What do you look at it? He's got a whole page full of notes.
Well, I've got a lot of notes.
Look how excited he is.
I mean, you guys were talking, so I was enjoying the whiskey. That's what we're here to do. So for me on the palate, like 121 proof. You gonna make it over there? Are you
killed
sure?
me. I'm good.
You got
Today's the day.
We
got this. Yeah.
Talk amongst yourselves.
I just inherited a podcast, everybody.
Yeah, you're good. Go ahead, man. Sorry.
121 proof. It really does not hit like that at all. I was very surprised. Like I got a little bit of like a peanut brittle up front, and then I got this weird combination of. I say weird in a good way, but like weird in that like I kept tasting it, and I'm like, I love these flavors. And I've never picked this up in a bourbon. And I just kept going back to it. But it's like this blueberry, apple cider, donut, this golden raisin, some cola spice in there, like anise clove, vanilla, caramel. Really good, like oak. It's got a really good oak balance to it. For 121 proof, the age on this, I assume, is at 6-7, same.
Yep.
Yeah. The oak on it, man, it really comes through. I would have pegged this as like a 10-year in a blind. Like I think it drinks much older than what it is, but it really shocked me to get like those really wild like fruit with the spice and the nuttiness. But I absolutely love. It's very rare I find blueberry in any type of whiskey at all. But going from blueberry to like creme brulee, apple cider donut, and golden raisin, I was like, man, this has me sold. Like, this is so unique. It's so special. And it's funny because, we were talking about these really good, like you guys want to put out a great drinkable bourbon. And even at Cask Strength, which is not sold here in America. I'm sorry for everyone listening. You can't get this. But
Suckers.
Not yet. Maybe a few years down the road. But it's crazy how drinkable this is at 121, and just the profile that it has. It is one of the most unique things I've had in a long time, and in the best way possible too. Because that's why I was taking notes. I'm like, man, this is really this is nuts for me to, everything just kept jumping out. I was like, I got to write this down.
I don't get all of those notes, but I trust your palate. I just get just the fruity again, and I don't like the cherry comes through again. That sugary note comes through again. The oak comes through off the barrel. And again, at 121, like you said, man, this is so, I don't want to call it an easy drinker, but man, I would not have thought this was a 121 to sip on it, because I love high proof stuff. And this is very nice on the palate. The finish lingers for quite a while.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of great notes on that. I get that kind of that tea kind of thing again off this bourbon. And maybe I'm just kind of in my mindset that I'm stuck on that. But yeah, man, I really, really like this, man.
Thanks.
Really good.
I can't believe you said blueberry. I've never heard that tasting note, period, on bourbon. And I've listened to a lot of shows. And
it's very rare,
never
that I've ever had blueberry on whiskey. I've had it on some like finished scotch.
Single malts and stuff. Yeah.
But an American whiskey, I was like, holy crap. Like I just kept, it's like this just blueberry, not like blueberry gum, not blueberry, whatever, but then the apple cider donut. You like those two notes. I was like, man, these are very unique.
Yeah.
But I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Very cool. So, Brian, we're almost at the end of the show, man.
That's kind of sad.
How fast this is going. We need to do round 4. No, I'm just kidding. Let's talk about the future, man. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on. What do you guys got coming up?
Yeah.
Can you share some things?
I mean, we started this year, 2024. So Forbes calls us the best bourbon in the world in 2023 in November. We sell out everywhere. Like, we can't keep, it's not on the shelves, but it's only available in Kentucky, right? We had only done licensing and distribution in Kentucky. Right. Because we didn't know that we were going to come out with that story. That wasn't like a pay to play thing at all. Yeah. Like, we didn't even know it was coming. In fact, Pat texted me the article. He's like, is this real? I was like, I don't know. What are you talking about? And that was I think it was on like Thanksgiving morning. I don't know. It was crazy.
It was on April 1st and it was like, damn it.
Yeah, right. It felt like that. So then we spent the whole last year just kind of drinking out of a fire hose, like trying to get it out there, because people wanted Never Say Die. They've heard about only the few people that had heard about it, like, wanted to try it, and we just couldn't get it to them. You know what I mean? So then I spent the next several months trying to get the word out and getting it into distribution. So we ended the year with like 8 states, I think, nice. A few out west, Illinois, Kentucky, Texas. And then we just opened up Ohio, like literally our first product shipped out in Ohio yesterday, frankly.
Okay.
And we're getting into Georgia, maybe Missouri. And then we're just trying to get the word out. But then, like, obviously we're on Sealbox too. So it's really just trying to get, like, the goal for me and for us as a brand is, this story is incredible. We think we have a really good whiskey to back it up, and a cool, authentic, like, tribute the way we make it.
Sure.
So, but we want it to be an approachable. Like, you've heard all the detail that we've gone through to make this product, and the fact that we're only selling it for like less than $70 for the bourbon, less than $80 for the rye.
Right.
We're trying to, like, I know that sounds expensive to some, and I apologize, because it is. It's expensive to make this, like, to get it in England and back.
I'm sure it is.
No, I meant to ask that question earlier in the episode, but honestly, I enjoyed you telling the story so much. I forgot that. I meant to ask the price point on that, because the cost to ship this stuff and back, I get $70-$80.
Yeah, and you're not cheap. You're not the labels. And I'm sorry, we didn't really get into a discussion, but the bottling. I mean, this what you're doing, man. You got the horseshoe on the bottom.
Yeah.
You got the embossed glass. You got the embossed up here.
Nothing was cheap.
That's not cheap.
No.
And the price point is.
So at this point, like, honestly, like, to be under $100 is these days is a like, and hey, you've made it under 100, but to be know, 70 around, or, you know, we'll say 70, give or take.
It's in the 60s.
Like that's awesome. Like that's fantastic.
And
that's a buy every day.
I'm just trying to, like, we're trying so hard. I mean, we're not making much money at that, as you can imagine. But it's trying so hard to get the story out to as many people as possible because we think the story's so like, I don't know, intriguing but just like people fall in love with it. And so I don't think a bourbon bar is complete without one Never Say Die bottle on it, right? Because that way you can, if your company gets boring and you're just like having a kind of a boring dinner, pull up the Never Say Die and like tell the story.
Have a conversation.
Then boom, you can talk about that for hours. Like, and so that's like we're just trying to not have a high price point to get the word out. We want like more quantity out there, and it's not because we're trying to get rich and sell a ton of barrels. It's more just like let's see how far this story can go. And see what happens with it, because we really don't have enough whiskey to like become Maker's Mark. Like we just don't. Like if I talk to you next year like this, who knows? We could be in all 50 states and like sold out, or we could just be floundering as a brand and like I could just be giving you free bottles. I don't know where it's going to go, but I hope.
We hope that doesn't happen, but we'll take your free bottles, man. We're always.
I got you.
You never.
I'm leaving one here tonight.
That's awesome, man. I mean that's great. I mean, are there any new? So you guys you're gonna stick it with the small batch bourbon, the rye. You get the barrel strength in England, hopefully coming to the U.S. maybe
someday.
There might, hopefully a bottle makes its way here for the Bourbon Life.
So anything else coming up? Are you going to stick with these two, or?
Yeah. Again, I mean, you guys talked about it. Like the bourbon boom has kind of come and it's starting to slow down, and people are like losing that excitement. Like they're not giving out tastings as much. They're not giving out free bottles. Like we are being aggressive when everyone else is being fearful, but like we're trying to keep it completely compartmentalized. Sorry. To where like laser focused, let's make a kick-ass bourbon, kick-ass rye, and like just get that out to as many people as possible, and then see where it goes. Like then we can have like a fan experience, which we definitely badly want to have here, where we combine horses, like the horse tourism and the bourbon tourism. Which I mean, we're going to do that within the next few years, probably before we launch the barrel strength here in America.
There's not like an experience. There's nothing here in the States.
No, and it eats us up that we haven't done that. But we've been so committed. I mean, this was like such a heavy lift just to get this onto the shelves in America like that. Now we're like, okay, let's get into as many states as possible, and then maybe we'll come up with the experience. And we probably should focus on the fan experience, because if people come to Lexington, they love horses, they love bourbon.
Oh, sure.
Is there anything better to come see a Never Say Die distillery?
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Or the Bourbon Life Podcast, presented by
at Hamburg Farm.
Hamburg Farm. I mean, like Lexington is one of those places where it's like. Where people forget about Lexington. Like there's not a ton of distilleries here, but we're within 20-30 minutes of some of the big guys, an hour away from Louisville, hour and a half or whatever. But I think I mean, if you guys ever did a gift shop or anything here, I think that'd be a ton of tourism.
I think it'd be awesome.
Especially
I'm gonna drink more of this.
Dig in, kill it.
We're gonna kill this,
please.
Look,
there you go. Oh wow, sorry, Chad.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry, Chad.
Right? But
I'll share, man.
I always say the world's so big, the bourbon world's so small. Like all the multifacets you guys have touched with your the background, the story, and everything. It's nuts. And I don't think most people realize that. That's like I'm so enamored by the story. Just hearing you tell it and you talking about it and your background. It's wild that. What you're doing has been a part of so much, and what you guys are creating is going to be part of a bigger thing as well. But I agree with you. Like I if people came to Kentucky, came to Lexington, a Never Say Die experience, a horse farm, whatever, a tour. I mean,
I could see it over here in Hamburg.
That's what,
on the farm.
It wouldn't be cool.
It'd be awesome. Cool. No, seriously, man, it'd be great.
Over by the Hamburg farm townhouses,
Wherever. There you go.
And I don't know where the bourbon market goes from here. I mean, like you guys have talked about on the pod, where like it maybe it's cooling off. I don't think people said wine and beer cooled off like 10 years ago, and people are still loving beer and wine and going out to Napa and wherever. And then every town in America has a bunch of breweries. Like
every town's got the best.
brewery. I think it's the post-COVID adjustment. I think everybody knew it was going to happen. Right.
Yeah.
We're not locked at home. Everybody's not drinking as much as they were. So I think we're just seeing this post-COVID adjustment. I don't think it's the bursting of a bubble. I think the consumption's still there. I think the interest is still there. I just don't know that there's that much. I think there's a lot of people writing negative things because they want to be the first person to be on, I broke the story about the market crashing or whatever. I don't think we're there.
No, I've unfollowed some people that just keep on doing that.
Yeah.
On, like,
The
Instagram.
naysayers.
You're
Yeah,
like, come on. Like, okay, so the growth is slowing a little bit.
Right.
Everybody's like, it's not everybody. So many bourbon drinkers still love bourbon, and they're just chasing it just the way they were before. And there's so much more stuff to experience now in it. I mean, this is like the heyday. I mean, if you were getting into bourbon 15 years ago, you had like 15, 20 options. Like they're really, but now
you've got a ton of stuff,
there's,
right?
there's new releases. There's all kinds of stuff. We're not even chasing that. I mean, like there's a lot of brands doing that. We're just
No, I love that. You guys are consistent. You're focused.
in 10 years, you can get someone wants a fancy gift. They want to go tell a good story. It'll still be the same bottle.
Same thing.
That's our plan.
I think that's awesome. So, Brian, I always like to ask our guests, what has been your favorite part of this journey for you in the whiskey industry?
This podcast tonight.
I'll drink to that, man. Cheers. Cheers.
No one ever.
Cheers.
I mean,
Sorry, Chad, you don't have a drink in your glass.
I
tonight.
don't
So
have a
sorry.
drink. I'll have
Or another rye.
I'll have a splash of rye.
You can have some of the barrel strength, man. I poured up heavy on that one if you want it.
You can kill.
I mean, I'm kind of half serious, honestly. I've been listening to this show for a long time, and frankly, I was on with Big Chief.
Yeah,
I think
that's
a year and a half
like
ago.
in January of last year, right?
And loved talking to him.
Yeah, he's a great dude, man.
But listening to you guys dissect these bourbons for years and like being here was really like a treat for me, frankly.
thanks,
so
man.
thanks. But like as far as like what's been the most fun thing, I mean, like that Bourbon Con event where people are standing room only to come listen to me tell a story, which is really cool. But probably the Epsom Derby, no doubt about it. Like when we actually went to the Epsom Derby and we launched our brand and we threw a party. Like we called the track and we're like, we're going to launch our bourbon at this track. And this is all based on a horse that did the same thing 70 something years ago. They were like, we will give you, like, we asked them, how do you throw a party for 100 people? And they're like, well, we've got this finish line stand in the infield where you can pull a double-decker bus, like an open-top British bus.
Damn.
So think about that. Like if you were in the infield at the Kentucky Derby, but they let you bring buses in. So there's like probably 25 parking spots at the Epsom Derby, and it's a massive event. And they gave us 3 of them, which is badass. So we got 2 buses and then a big space in between with a bar where we had given away Never Say Die cocktails.
So I'm picturing.
You want to talk about a party?
I'm picturing Wolf of Wall Street. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was that kind of party. No,
it was not quite. No.
That's awesome, though, man. I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
So, very cool. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up here tonight?
No. I mean, I just hope people keep searching out bourbons that they love, and the fact that you guys are making people fall in love with bourbons, new bourbons every day, is super cool. And just keep the good news and the good vibes going for this brand, for this market, because it's such a fun. Like everybody loves whiskey. I'm gonna love whiskey when I'm 70 years old, no doubt about it. And it's just fun to. There's nothing better to get around with a bunch of guys like which we have tonight and just tell stories and drink whiskey and kill bottles, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I agree, man. Chad, any final thoughts before we wrap it up, man?
No, I do want to thank. I want to thank Brian for being here, sharing his story, his brand story, and some amazing whiskey with us this evening.
Yeah, for sure.
Love that, to meet him at Bourbon Con and hear him talk, and then be here tonight. It's awesome. Before Bourbon Con, like the only like really touch of Never Say Die that I had was my friends Chad and Sarah had let me try some of your stuff for, and I was like, man, this stuff's awesome. And to go from a year ago.
Hey, look, we don't talk about other podcasts.
They don't podcast. They don't
that's right.
Yeah.
Damn it.
they do YouTube, Mark.
I love Chad. It's bourbon night. Chad, love
They
that.
do successful YouTube videos, Mark.
Oh shit! Wow.
But
Thanks, Chad.
I've had a blast
your
tonight.
mic.
That's why you poured the last Barrel Strength and didn't give him any.
That's
That's
his
why,
mic
yeah.
right now. Yeah.
But to everyone listening, whatever time of day it is, morning, noon, or night, we thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to us here at the Bourbon Life Podcast. Then get your Bourbon Life fix. And to wrap it up with a tagline.
Yeah, you just stepped it right in there for Matt. So no, see, I gotta do all that. But no,
Go ahead.
Thank you guys. I mean, Chad, thank you for filling in for Matt.
Happily.
Love Matt, but you've done a great job, man. So we could do this regularly. No offense, Matt.
Sorry, Matt.
I see how easy
crushed
it is
it.
now. Yeah.
Or Matt's parent. If Matt's parents are listening, I love your son, but
Yes,
Chad,
Matt's mom, Matt's dad.
Brian, thank you so much, man, for joining us.
My
man.
pleasure, guys.
We've had a great time, man, and I know it's short notice, but thank you so much for doing this, man. After hearing you talk at Bourbon Con, I was like, that we got to have you on. You guys have sent some bottles before, and I appreciate that, and I've enjoyed it. But to hear you talk and to hear the story of the brand, and just being able to say I live on Hamburg. I just
So
I love it. It is, man. It really is. It's
The
like,
horse may have been born literally like
Right
on
here,
this
I swear to
lot.
God, I don't think you've known what you've done to this man's ego.
And all he did was just like build a house. Like,
That's right.
Like he should have like had a tribute to this place. But
know.
now they just built a house.
That's right.
damn.
There you go.
Come on.
There you go. We're gonna put like the Never Say Die Bourbon banner out in front of the house.
Do it.
Right. So there you go. So, but no, thank you so much for joining us, man. We appreciate it.
My pleasure,
And
man.
we appreciate you, our listeners. Thank you guys. Whatever time of day it is, morning, noon, or night, whenever you get your Bourbon Life fix, we appreciate you guys taking the time to join us and listen. We know there's a ton of podcasts out there. So thank you guys for listening to us. Thank you to our sponsors as well. We appreciate you guys. Couldn't do the show without your help and support. So thank you all for doing that. Don't forget, we talked about Big Chief. Brian was on the whiskey trip last year. So don't forget, Big Chief's out there doing the whiskey trip. Every Tuesday, a new episode comes out under our umbrella. So be sure to check that out. Give him a like and follow as well as the whiskey trip. If you want to reach out to us, you can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram, Facebook at The Bourbon Life. We have the private Facebook group called The Bourbon Lifers. We'd love to have you join us in there on Facebook if you're inclined to do that. With that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the Bourbon Life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the Bourbon Life.